There is a quiet kind of fear that rarely speaks its name. A fear that doesn't shout or tremble, but moves like a shadow behind the ribs. It appears in moments when someone looks at you a little too long, a little too gently, as if they might notice the parts you've kept hidden even from yourself. Most people think loneliness comes from not being known. But for many, it comes from the opposite, from the terrifying possibility that someone might finally see who they are beneath the practiced smile, beneath the polite silence, beneath the version of themselves they've learned to carry. This is the fear of being truly seen, truly understood, and perhaps truly touched by another human being. Because being known is not just closeness. It is exposure. And exposure feels like a type of risk the body remembers too well. Chapter 1. The first tremor. It often begins in a moment that feels almost ordinary. A conversation that lingers a little longer than expected. A question asked with sincerity instead of routine. A pause where someone waits, not for your practiced answer, but for the truth beneath it. That is when the first tremor appears. It doesn't look like fear. It looks like a sudden urge to change the subject. A polite laugh. A shift of the eyes toward a safer distance. The heart tightens before the mind can understand why. Because being truly seen does not start when someone understands you. It starts the instant they try. The body reacts before the story does. The shoulders lift, the breath shortens, the thoughts scatter. There is an instinctive retreat, as if closeness were a bright light and you were already blinking against its warmth. Most people don't notice this tremor. They think they're simply shy, or not good at opening up, or just tired. But the truth is quieter. The tremor is the body remembering a time when being open wasn't safe. A time when softness was met with misunderstanding, or judgment, or silence. And so, without warning, the mind builds a small wall, thin enough to keep the moment gentle, but strong enough to keep the heart untouched. This chapter is where the story begins. In the tiny, invisible flinch that happens when someone steps just one layer too close. In the delicate pause where connection becomes possible, and the fear quietly asks you to step back. Chapter 2. Where the fear was born. Every fear has a birthplace, even the ones that grow so quietly we forget where they began. The fear of being truly seen often starts long before adulthood, in rooms where a child learned to measure their words, or in moments where honesty felt too heavy for the people meant to carry it. For some, it began with scrutiny. A parent who watched too closely, who corrected every expression, who made emotions feel like tests that had to be passed. When a child grows up under a microscope, they learn to shrink themselves to survive it. For others, it began with absence, a gentle voice that never came, a comfort that never arrived. When no one meets your inner world, you learn to lock it away. And then there are the stories where authenticity was simply misunderstood, where a child's excitement was called too much, their sadness overreacting, their truth inconvenient. In these moments, the lesson lands quietly. Your real self makes things harder for others. So the child adapts. They build careful versions of themselves. The agreeable one, the strong one, the quiet one, the one who never becomes a burden. These versions grow with them, like protective layers of soft armor. By the time they reach adulthood, the origin is forgotten, but the pattern remains. Openness feels dangerous. Attention feels exposing. Being known feels like stepping into a spotlight that once burned too hot. Fear is rarely born in darkness. It is born in unmet moments, the ones where a young heart learned it was safer to hide than to be held. Chapter 3. The psychology of exposure. The fear of being truly seen is not just emotional. It is biological. It lives in the nervous system long before the mind gives it meaning. When someone looks at you with genuine attention, the brain interprets it as a form of exposure, a moment where your inner world becomes visible. To the conscious mind, this may seem harmless, but to the deeper layers of the brain, exposure has always meant vulnerability. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector, cannot distinguish between emotional danger and physical danger. A quiet question that brushes too close to your truth can activate the same alarm bells as a sudden sound in a dark room. Attachment theory explains this further. If early relationships taught you that authenticity leads to rejection, conflict, or invisibility, your internal model of connection becomes shaped around caution. Closeness feels unpredictable. Intimacy feels like walking toward a door you're not sure will open. Schemas form deep mental frameworks about who you are and how the world responds to you. For someone afraid of being seen, these schemas whisper familiar lines. Don't reveal too much. Don't become a burden. Don't give anyone the chance to leave. So when someone tries to understand you, your mind does not celebrate the moment. It prepares for impact. This is why the fear feels so immediate, so physical, so disproportionate to the moment. It is not the present you are reacting to, but every moment in the past when openness felt unsafe. Exposure is not dangerous, but the body remembers when it was. Chapter 4. The Mask and the Mirror. There is a quiet conflict that unfolds inside anyone who fears being known. A gentle tug-of-war between two longings, the longing to be understood and the longing to remain unseen enough to feel safe. Most people don't recognize this as conflict. They think they are simply private, or independent, or better alone. But beneath these identities lies a complex choreography of self-protection. The mask forms slowly. It is not deception. It is survival shaped into personality. A smile that hides discomfort. A calm tone that hides overwhelm. A practiced version of yourself that feels easier for others to accept. This mask becomes familiar, reliable. A quiet shield that lets you navigate the world without risking too much of your inner truth. But then comes the mirror, another person whose presence reflects back pieces of you that you did not intend to reveal. A slip of vulnerability, a moment of softness, a truth said too honestly before you could pull it back, and suddenly the mask feels thinner than you remembered. You feel exposed, even if nothing has been said aloud. This is where resistance rises. Not anger, but retreat. A subtle distancing. A gentle withdrawal masked as busyness or tiredness or needing space. Because part of you wants to be known, and part of you fears the consequences of being seen too clearly. The conflict is not a flaw. It is a story. The story of someone who learned to protect their heart even when it longed to be met. And every moment of closeness becomes a test between staying hidden and being found. Chapter 5. When the moment breaks, there comes a moment, often small, almost forgettable, when the fear of being seen meets its quiet limit. Not because the fear disappears, but because you begin to sense the cost of carrying it. It might happen during a conversation that should have felt ordinary. Someone asks how you've been, and for a split second you consider telling the truth. Not the polished version, not the easy version, but the real one. Yet the words stop in your throat. The old instinct returns. Stay safe, stay small, stay hidden. But this time, something feels different. Their eyes soften. Their voice waits. And in that pause you see something you did not expect. Not pressure, not intrusion, but space. A kind of space that feels unfamiliar in its gentleness. You feel the wall rise, but you also feel the loneliness behind it. A loneliness that has grown quietly over the years, fed by every moment you chose silence instead of closeness, safety instead of connection. This is the breaking point. Not a dramatic explosion, but a slow, internal cracking where the longing to be understood finally speaks louder than the instinct to hide. The realization does not arrive with certainty. It arrives like a whisper. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to let someone see just a little more. Maybe the world won't collapse if you allow one honest sentence to escape. And for the first time, the fear doesn't feel like a command. It feels like a memory. Something old, something protective, but no longer something that needs to decide who you are becoming. Chapter 6. The slow return to openness. Healing rarely begins with a grand moment. It begins with a small softness, a breath held a little less tightly, a truth shared in half sentences, a moment where you let someone stay instead of stepping away. Openness does not return all at once. It comes back like the seasons, in quiet cycles of retreat and return. You test the ground. You reveal a fraction of your inner world and wait to see if it is met with gentleness or misunderstanding. When it is met with gentleness, something in the body loosens. Not a sudden transformation, but a subtle recalibration, as if your nervous system is learning a different ending than the one it wrote years ago. You begin to notice how connection feels in real time. How the shoulders soften when someone listens without judgment. How the breath steadies when you are not performing a version of yourself. How the silence between two people can feel comforting instead of suffocating. There is still fear. There will always be traces of it. But fear stops being the narrator. It becomes a background sound, present, but no longer in control. Openness grows in micro moments, when you let someone see your tiredness, your uncertainty, your unpolished truth. When you stop hiding the parts that once felt too fragile to offer. Healing is not becoming fearless. It is learning that you can be seen and still remain whole. That vulnerability does not lead to collapse, but to connection. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your inner world begins to trust the light again. Chapter 7. Seen, known, and still safe. There comes a quiet moment, often long after the healing has begun, when you realize something has shifted. The world has not become safer. People have not become more predictable. But you have learned that being known does not dissolve you. You notice it in the smallest ways. In the ease of your own breath when someone asks how you're really doing. In the steadiness of your voice when you speak a truth without rehearsing it. In the warmth that rises, not from being admired, but from being understood. For so long, you believed that being seen meant losing control. That if someone touched the deeper layers of who you are, the fragile parts would break open and leave you exposed in ways you could never repair. But now you see something different, that being seen can be strength, that being known can be grounding, that letting someone witness your inner world does not make you smaller, but more real. The fear doesn't disappear completely. It lingers like an old echo, a reminder of what once felt unbearable. But it no longer dictates the shape of your relationships or the distance you keep from the people you care about. And there is a gentle freedom in that. A freedom born not from perfection, but from honesty. From the quiet confidence that comes with letting another person meet your truth. The soft parts, the uncertain parts, the human parts. Being truly seen was never the danger. The danger was the loneliness that grew in the silence you carried. Now, the story ends where connection begins. In the soft, unguarded space where you can finally be known and still feel safe.